What if you could literally upgrade your brain's operating system? Well, let's dive right into this explainer and build what I like to call a psychological toolkit. Today, we're going to extract the absolute best, evidence-based strategies from behavioral science to give you a massive edge. We're talking about optimizing your daily life, taking back your precious time, and totally mastering your interpersonal dynamics.
But first, picture this. You're walking into a big meeting, and bam, you spill a little coffee on your shirt. Or maybe you trip on a curb in public. Instantly, your face gets hot, right? You just want the ground to swallow you up whole. You're completely convinced you are center stage and the entire room is judging your every move. But, as you'll see, our brains are actually tricking us into feeling way more noticed than we really are.
So here is our roadmap for today. First, overcoming your inner critic. Second, hacking productivity and habits. Third, mastering conflict and negotiation. And finally, the science of persuasion. We are basically going on a journey from mastering your internal world to successfully navigating everyone else.
All right, kicking off with Section 1, Overcoming Your Inner Critic. It is time to truly dismantle the illusion that everyone is watching you.
The really crucial thing to understand here is that feeling like everyone is staring at you isn't paranoia. It's not a personal flaw. It's actually a well-documented cognitive bias called the spotlight effect. From an evolutionary standpoint, this kind of hyper-awareness kept our ancestors connected to their tribes, because back then, social rejection could literally mean death. Just realizing that this is ancient mental wiring and not actual reality is your first step to feeling completely free in public.
Researchers at Cornell University set up this absolutely brilliant test to measure this perceived versus actual attention. They actually had students put on a super embarrassing t-shirt featuring the singer Barry Manilow. They even pre-tested this shirt to make sure the student population considered it incredibly uncool. Now imagine the intense, squirming discomfort these students felt walking into a packed, quiet room, totally convinced that all eyes were judging them. The students wearing the shirt were certain that at least 50% of the room would notice their embarrassing outfit. But the actual number? Only 25% of the room even recalled it. Let that sink in for a second. We are consistently overestimating our audience by double. Everyone else is just too busy starring in their own mental movie to scrutinize yours.
So how do we overcome this bias in real time? You can use what's called the SPOT framework. Say you stumble over your words in a meeting. First, just stop and recognize the bias. Next, perspective shift. Remind yourself that everyone else is highly focused on their own lives and their own insecurities. Then, observe the room for actual evidence. Are people actually staring, or are they just looking down at their phones? And finally, test your assumptions. Ask a trusted colleague later if they even noticed your little slip-up.
You know, you can apply this exact same psychological relief to public speaking, which is basically where the spotlight effect hits us the hardest. The research shows you absolutely should not memorize a script word for word. Use an outline so you sound natural and take the pressure off. Develop a lucky charm. Maybe it's a specific pair of socks or just a deep breathing routine to trick your nervous system out of that fight or flight mode. Remember, your audience is probably distracted or insecure themselves, so just fake confidence until you make it, because the more comfortable you act, the more comfortable they'll be.
Moving right along to Section 2, Hacking Productivity and Habits. Let's look at how mastering our inner mindset builds the absolute foundation for elite, top-tier productivity. Way back in the 1920s, a psychologist named Zeigarnik made a fascinating discovery. Unfinished tasks heavily burden our brains. We call it the Zeigarnik Effect today. Think about that nagging, anxious feeling of a forgotten email just hovering in the back of your mind. It's awful, right? But studies show that simply writing down a plan or a to-do list actually frees up your brain's cognitive resources. Getting it out of your head and onto physical paper provides this literal sigh of relief, completely eliminating that executive burden.
And hey, while you're executing that to-do list, remember this: multitasking is a total myth. Brain imaging actually shows our brains can really only process one conscious thought at a time through a central bottleneck. So when you're switching back and forth between tasks, you're creating a lag that drops your productivity by up to 40%. Even wilder, it's been shown to temporarily decrease your IQ by up to 10 points. Multitasking isn't making you faster, it's literally making you less effective. Because your focused time is so incredibly precious, you need a ruthless filter to protect it. Before you say yes to any new request, just pause and ask yourself, does this fit my career goals? Does it actually use my unique skills? Never, ever answer a request right on the spot. Take a breath, evaluate it against these critical questions, and fiercely guard your time.
Okay, once you've reclaimed your time, we look to the phenomenal work of James Clear in his book Atomic Habits. The fundamental shift here is realizing that success isn't about setting these massive, daunting goals. Goals are just about the results you want. Systems are about the daily processes that actually get you to those results.
Clear breaks this down into the 4 laws of behavior change. To build a solid habit, you have to make the cue obvious, make the craving attractive, make the response easy, and make the reward satisfying. Let's say you want to read more. Make the book obvious by putting it on your pillow. Make the craving attractive by pairing it with a great cup of coffee. Make it easy by committing to just 2 pages a day. And make it satisfying by tracking your streak on a calendar. These tiny, minuscule changes stack up to yield truly remarkable outcomes.
All right, Section 3, Mastering Conflict and Negotiation. Now that our internal world and our daily systems are humming, let's step outward and apply this psychology to dealing with other people.
Let's start with high-stakes conversations. Have you heard of the anchoring effect? It reveals that the very first number thrown out in a negotiation heavily skews the entire final outcome. When baseball agent Scott Boras demanded a massive $100 million contract for Manny Ramirez, that extreme anchor disproportionately dragged all the team's counteroffers higher. Whether you're negotiating your salary or buying a used car, whoever sets that first anchor heavily controls the gravitational pull of the whole conversation.
But what happens when negotiations turn into personal conflicts? That's where you need active listening. You should restate their exact words, paraphrase to show you really understand, summarize their emotions, and crucially, reframe the issue. Reframing takes a negative complaint like, "I do all the work around here," and shifts it to a shared goal, like, "I hear that you want us to be equal partners." It instantly moves you from a tense, me versus you battle into a constructive, shared solution.
And finally, Section 4, the science of persuasion. Let's move beyond basic communication and into the actual, measurable science of influence.
If you have ever studied marketing or communication, you have absolutely seen Robert Cialdini's famous 7 principles of persuasion. They are the deep psychological triggers that make people say yes. But here is the massive mistake most people make. These principles tell you how people are influenced, but they don't tell you when to use them. Spraying these tactics around and just hoping they work, that's exactly like a doctor prescribing heavy medication without diagnosing the illness first. It's just blind guessing.
The solution to this is the Sue Influence Framework. It argues that before you try to persuade anyone, you have to carefully diagnose the specific force blocking them. Are they held back by a comfort in their old routine? Use reciprocity or a small commitment to playfully disrupt it. Are they frozen by anxiety and risk? Whatever you do, don't use scarcity. That will immediately backfire. Instead, use authority and unity to make them feel safe. You absolutely have to match the exact psychological tool to the exact psychological blockage.
So, when we bring this entire toolkit together, from beating the spotlight effect to building systems to targeted persuasion, the most profound takeaway from all this research is that true behavioral change is identity-based. Like James Clear beautifully notes, you don't just say, "I want to lose weight." You shift your mindset and say, "I am the type of person who prioritizes health."
So, armed with the science of overcoming your inner critic, maximizing your absolute focus, and effectively influencing those around you, who is the person you are choosing to become? And more importantly, how are you going to use this toolkit to impact the world, starting right now?